Hi everyone, my name is Costas Yiangou. I have just concluded my year as Young Members Board Chair, and we are sitting today with the outgoing president of the institution, Phil Peel, in the latest episode of the Talking Together series. Phil, we're back at the library of the institution.
Yeah, Costas, it's really great to be here today as part of the Talking Together program. It's been quite hectic, I have to say. Trying to fit everything in and see everybody and meet all the requirements of the job has been challenging at times, but I've really enjoyed it, and I wouldn't have swapped it for anything. I think it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to be president of the institution for the year. I've got so much out of it, and hopefully those who've actually received me on the various presidential visits and activities that I've managed to fulfill have got a lot out of it as well.
Yeah, it's for me as well. It's just concluding, and it feels a bit bittersweet because there's a lot of work that has gone into it, a lot of effort. Always thinking that there's some things that you could do better, but yeah, it has gone quite quickly, I would say. What does mental health and well-being mean to you?
I think that's a really good question, and maybe one that we don't personally reflect on enough. I think for me, it's making sure that I have the right balance in terms of what I do. So I don't spend too much time actually overloading my mental part of my body at the neglect of maybe other areas, so the physical side. And I think we know what it means to keep our bodies healthy from a physical perspective, eating well, exercising sufficiently. But I don't think we really reflect enough on what it means to keep our bodies healthy from a mental point of view. And the fact that the mental aspects are so important as well, to make sure that we strike that right balance. So, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, later on in the interview about different aspects. But for me, it's actually making sure that balance between physical and mental is actually the right one.
So Phil, that's very interesting. And leading on from that, you have retained your role as a chief engineer at GE as well as the president of the institution in the last year. How did you find that work-life balance, and what did you do to support your mental health and well-being?
That's absolutely right, Costas. And GE have been very, very supportive of me doing the presidency, and have given me a tremendous amount of time to fit in all the presidential activities. So I give credence to them and thanks to them for the support that they've provided. But I think there were times in the year where clearly trying to fit in both the full-time job as well as the presidential activities was quite tough. And I had to think, now's the time to take a bit of a step back, just take a bit of a time out and chill and just relax and get ready for the next step forward. And so actually I planned into the year a bit of a quiet period during January, where the presidential activities are normally fairly quiet, and actually at GE it was reasonably quiet as well. And that gave me quite a nice time about halfway through the presidency where I was able to recharge my batteries somewhat and actually then prepare myself for the second half of the presidency.
Phil, you have taken over as president during a difficult time for the world amidst a global pandemic. How do you think that has impacted mental health and well-being?
I think the COVID period was a real challenge for a lot of people from a mental health point of view. We essentially went from a situation where we had freedom of movement to one where we were locked down and we were stuck at home. And that meant that effectively the interaction that you normally would have with other people was taken away. And I think that's a tremendous help in terms of actually maintaining a stable mental attitude, having the opportunity to share ideas and to talk to other people face to face. And I look back, and my presidency has not been affected by it as badly as the presidencies of firstly Peter and then Terry. Terry had to do the whole of his presidency, unfortunately, in a lockdown situation, and I take my hat off to him to the way that he actually managed that. But people obviously suffered from the COVID period. There were people who were actually affected directly by the pandemic, and my sympathies go out to them. But also, I think people perhaps were more impacted from a mental perspective than they maybe thought at the time. And moving on, maybe found it more difficult to actually re-establish contacts and re-establish the social aspects of meeting together. And it takes time. And I think I've seen over my year the move to us wanting to actually start up face-to-face meetings again. And I think that's very good. But let's face it, we're living now in a slightly different world, and we're not in the same world as we were pre-COVID. We now have other abilities and means for us to actually share together. Hybrid, I think, is here to stay, let's be honest. And we need to understand how we can work around that in terms of actually the social aspects that actually that brings. So I think, yes, tremendous challenges. I'm amazed at the way that people have actually bounced back. If nothing else, I think you can say that we're all very resilient in terms of the way that we actually have come out of the pandemic. But I think an awareness is needed where you see people who maybe are not in the position where they were prior to the pandemic, then it's just reach out to them and actually try to understand where they are and provide your support. At the end of the day, we're here to support one another. And if we can actually come alongside people who are maybe struggling a little bit with coming out of the back end of the pandemic, then I think that's the best thing we can do.
I think that's really important, and you don't really understand what the social interaction gives to you, and until that goes away, right? So, and I think the IMechE, we've experienced that as volunteers. We went through a point where we were, actively engaging socially as well, with meetings within the institution. To you mentioned Terry, he went through his whole
to nothing.
Yeah, to nothing, which actually leads to an interesting question about volunteering and in the institution. You have obviously done tremendous amount of work this year for the institution. Is that something that you're looking at continuing to do and continue volunteering with the institution in the upcoming years?
I would like to continue to support the institution, of course, and as a past president, I will be doing that as part of council. I will sit on council when I come off the trustee board. I would also be open to providing my support in other areas wherever it's needed. I think I owe it to my wife to maybe to wind down the support of the institution somewhat compared to what it's been during the presidential year. But yes, I think every past president feels that they want to continue to support the institution. They've invested all their time in the presidency because they are passionate about engineering, but also passionate about supporting the work of the institution. And clearly, I think we want to continue doing that as we move forward.
Talking about volunteering, how have you seen the IMechE's approach to mental health and well-being change in the last few years?
If I reflect back as to when I first joined the trustee board about 6 years ago, I think we've made tremendous steps forward. This latest initiative that the young members have rolled out, the Talking Together, I think is recognition of that. And also the work that the support network has been doing in support of our members, I think is all testimony to the steps that the institution is taking as it moves forward to address this.
So Phil, you have a unique perspective as an international president. How do you think the work-life balance differs and mental health support differs between the UK and Switzerland?
I think that's a really good question, and I think it's fundamentally linked to the different cultures in the country. And having lived in Switzerland for 21 years now, it certainly has a different culture than the UK. I can probably reflect better on what it's like in Switzerland than I can on what it's like in the UK, not having lived here for such a long time. But in Switzerland, I think what really helps them to address the work-life balance is they are really into clubs. It is a very common thing for a Swiss person to join a club and get involved in that club's activities. And I'm a member of a club. I sing in Switzerland. I enjoy it greatly. And I actually use that as an opportunity for me to address the work side against the leisure side. So when I go off and do my practice every Tuesday evening, I'm effectively switching off from work and I'm enjoying the leisure activities that I do in the club. And a lot of Swiss, I think, benefit from that. So it's a different approach. I think there certainly are clubs running over here in the UK, but maybe people aren't as actively involved in them as they are in Switzerland. There's certainly an awful lot of clubs in Switzerland and people tend to join them. Yeah. So Costas, maybe I can ask a question of you. I think you moved over here from Cyprus in 2009. So maybe I can ask you what your perspective is in terms of a comparison of what you think the approach to mental health is maybe over in Cyprus compared to what it is in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm in the same boat, having worked really all of my life in the UK. But in a similar way, I do. I think I work on this daily. It's something that you have to be able to take the time for yourself. So I do similar things. I have something that I would like to do, whether it's exercising or cycling, and that really helps. Taking that time away from work and thinking about how you can rest both physically and mentally, and it's vitally important.
Yeah, totally agree.
Phil, thanks again for your time. It's been a pleasure having you on this initiative. This is something that we would like to continue in the future, and you starting this is vital. So we'd like to really thank you again as part of the young members.
Yeah, Costas, I'm very welcome. It's good that we've had the opportunity to come and as it says, talk together today. And that's what it's all about, to convey the way we feel about the work we do for the institution and some of the challenges that we may have had in the past in terms of mental health. I think it's really good to talk about those subjects. And also I think it's really good to encourage volunteers to get involved in the activities of the institution. We rely so heavily on the work that they provide. So yeah, if there are volunteers out there listening to this, then I would encourage them to get involved in the institution, and your work would be greatly appreciated.